Welcome to another edition of Post Media's Ottawa-Senators panel. I'm Ken Warren with Bruce Garriock and special guest star this week, Steve Warren of the Steve Warren Project podcast.
There it is.
There it is.
Well done.
By the way, Warren.
The Warren Commission.
Yeah, exactly.
Warren v. Warren.
So we, guys, we're going to talk about, this is coming out after the win over Boston. Big win on home ice against the Bruins. A bumpy road trip for sure from the Senators before that. What do we take out of one home ice win here? Are they playing better?
Oh, I think they are. There's no question about that. We talked off the air a little bit about home ice advantage. For a team that's often going to be outmatched as far as skill goes, this gives DJ Smith a chance to have last change, get the matchups he wants. He's an organized coach, and I think that really serves the Senators well. And you can't say enough about Anders Nielsen in the game he had against Boston. That was a terrific performance against one of the best teams in all the NHL. Nielsen has been a real epiphany for this team.
Well, I think what we've seen pretty much on a consistent basis, we saw it Saturday in Philadelphia. We saw it in Edmonton on the second last game of that road trip. Is this team works hard, Kenny?
Yeah, they do.
They don't have the best talent in the world. They have guys who probably haven't played on an NHL power play much in their careers, if at all. But the one thing they've done fairly consistently is worked hard. And I thought against the Boston Bruins, Kenny, they worked smart. And they also were physical and block shots, and that to me was the difference in the game.
Yeah, Nielsen was outstanding. The guy, when you talk about a guy that's work hard, maybe don't have all the skill in the world, and the more and more you watch Connor Brown, a guy doesn't get mentioned much because he doesn't get the numbers, but especially when you're ahead in a game or in checking assignment, this guy is a really, really good player. But maybe on this team, it's a first line, second line. If this team eventually develops the skill, that would be the kind of guy who would be on the third or a fourth line kind of player. Right?
For sure. And one of the things you always have to bear in mind is that goal prevention is as valuable as goal production. Connor Brown won't wow anybody on your stats page for the most part, but he is a guy that's always in the right spot. This team now has guys like him instead of guys like Matt Duchene, Mike Hoffman, who would dazzle you a little more, be a little more entertaining, but were they really worried about D-zone coverage, for example?
Well, but the only argument I give you to that is on a team that's starved for goals, guys like Connor Brown, who play as many minutes as they do, they got to score goals. And one of the things that DJ Smith and this club brought Connor Brown in to do was provide more offense. And he's got to score more than one goal in 16 or 17 games to be a completely effective player for this team. I have no issue with the way he plays defensively. I think that's great. But for the minutes he gets, him and guys like Tierney, they got to put some offense up.
But then we get to the question of how much winning do you want? How much losing do you want? And you look down to Belleville, and you look at guys starting to light it up. Batherson is playing really well in the AHL, but they want him to fine-tune and make sure he can play a complete game. Josh Norris, another young guy. Formanton. These guys are lighting it up. And Balcers, of course, that fans are familiar with from last year. Where's the line of when do you start bringing... And let's get into Logan Brown a bit, too, because where do you juggle these guys, and who plays, and how do you make those decisions?
Well, you're seeing the difference between the American Hockey League and the NHL in the form of Logan Brown. There's a temptation to go get guys like Batherson and Balcers because combined right now, I think they have 28 points in the last 10 games. Batherson is your American Hockey League leading scorer. Balcers right now is probably your leader as far as points per game average. These are guys who look like they belong in the NHL, but you're seeing it with Brown, who is ripping it up in the American Hockey League. He comes up, and you're going to take away Anthony Duclair's minutes or whoever. This is a situation where it's a big step. People don't realize how big a step it is from the American Hockey League to the NHL. So the Sens want to make sure these guys are overripe before they arrive in the league.
Well, and that's a really good point on Duclair, Steve, because you look at a guy like Logan Brown, I think he's put himself, as we speak right now, in a very precarious position with this team. He was brought up to be either this club's number one or number two center. His ice time has slipped. He was a healthy scratch in Calgary. They said it was because it was a back-to-back game. It was because, Kenny, and you were at that game in Minnesota. He was -2 with what, 10 minutes of ice time?
And when somebody blows by you and it's that obvious, it was at the fourth or fifth goal. I don't know. There was a lot of goals in that game, but it's attention to detail, right?
Monday before the Boston game in the morning skate, one of the assistant coaches talked to him about skating on every shift. And that's one of the things that Logan Brown has to do is he's got to skate on every shift, because when a guy is that big and he's that noticeable and he's not skating, he becomes even more noticeable because the people think he's standing still for some reason. So I think they look at that situation. Absolutely down the road, do they expect Logan Brown to be their number one or number two center? Yeah, they do. But he's got to do it a little more consistently if he's going to stay at this level.
And it's not to put too much attention just on him on the power play, but that power play remains terrible, and he's one of the guys that needs to spark it, right? And so if he's not sparking the power play and he's not holding his own he's playing right now as a fourth-line center. That's not his role. So what do you do with the guy?
Well, it's a tough call. I think he's in the headspace right now that Nick Paul has been in for the last couple of years, right? Nick Paul isn't going to be a guy who gets you 80 points, whereas I think Logan Brown has the potential to do that. He's got that skill. But in terms of the consistency of effort, I think that's where Nick Paul was for the last couple of years, and then a light switch has gone off for him this year. That's where Logan Brown is right now. He has to find that level of consistency.
So since we're talking about Belleville and Brown and guys who might be up and down, Eric Brannstrom, we haven't talked about him going down. He went down last week, and I think it was the right move. I mean, he wasn't getting any energy or any cycle. It looked like where's the hype about this guy?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think one of the reasons they sent him down, Ken, is he's got to get some offense, and his lack of offensive creation here was hurting his confidence. And the other thing was, and I spoke to Troy Mann briefly about this last night. He thought he was okay in his first game. He was way better in his second game. He only had a morning skate. They'll get 3 days of practice this week. He'll get the opportunity to be better. But one of the things that Mann said they have to do is get Brannstrom's minutes back up. Right. And I think he said he played him 24 minutes on Friday. So he wasn't getting that at this level, and he'll go get down there, play a big role, and then get to contribute.
Maybe he was one of those guys that it doesn't come for you early, and you get caught in, okay, you don't be too conservative, because he is an offensive guy, but then you don't want to make mistakes offensively, so you get too conservative, and then you're not playing your game, and you're caught in between.
Well, that's what you worry about with this player. Is he caught in between being a very good American Hockey League player and a good NHL player? This guy has been in a situation where, well, I just throw that aside there.
You're a little busy.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Busy guys.
The American Hockey League, as I talked about with the Logan Brown thing, that's a great starting point, but it's a big jump to the NHL. I worry about this guy. I don't know why so many people are saying, oh, he'll go down to the minors and he'll be fine. I don't know where that comes from. Right. What have you seen so far in his 20-some games in the NHL where you say, oh, yeah, that guy's the real deal? I think it could still be there. And Pierre Dorion called his acquisition the greatest day of his GM life. So I assume there's a lot to like there, but I haven't seen it yet at all in the NHL.
Yeah, and I think that's part of why he stayed up here a little bit longer than maybe he should have, because you're trying to promote and hype the guy that you got. But now you throw him down there and you give him opportunities. The spotlight isn't as big. Let's face it. If he makes a mistake down there, we're not all over him necessarily. But if he makes 2 or 3, then you are. But at the same time, it gives him time to maybe just pull back a little bit and figure out where exactly. And you got coaching down there that they're getting the instructions from above too, and what they want to develop out of this.
Yeah, and you know what? They play weekends down there, right? So he's going to get 3 real good days of practice, or 3 or 4. So it'll be good for him, and skill development too.
So that's about wraps up this week. A lot of talk about Belleville and Brannstrom and Brown. A lot of B's going on, and what they're going to do, and up and down. But this is the state of this rebuilding team, right? I'd like once again to thank Steve Warren for coming in, and Bruce Garriott and myself. We'll see you next time.